Alright, hello everybody. Looks like the feed's coming in. Let me just get some stuff set up. Announced. Alright, hello everybody. And mute that. Gotta plug my stuff. Test. Howdy there. Let me just quick make an announcement to my patrons. By the way, if I have any issues with audio, such as if it's cutting out or if the noise gate is too harsh, tell me immediately, because I want to make sure that there's not audio issues on this, because I've had audio issues on the first one. Alright, let me just make sure I got this announced everywhere I need. Alrighty, let's see. Okay, that seems good. So hello everybody. Those of you who are from YouTube or wherever have you. I don't really use Twitch all that much, but I'm trying to change that because there's not really anywhere else to stream aside from Picarto. And I more use my Picarto for not safe for work. And it's not like you can really save stuff off of Picarto. Anyway, so the theme this month is going to be character design. As usual, if you're on the Patreon, you can comment in the classroom chat, and you can basically ask questions right then and there, and I'll answer them. I'll see the questions in Patreon before I see them in the Twitch stream and whatnot. So there's a few things that I'm going to cover. I'm going to first cover stuff like about profile and overall shape. I'm going to talk about intentions when designing shapes and stuff like that for characters. I'm going to talk a bit about balance, then I'm going to also talk about color harmony, because color is surprisingly something that a lot of people struggle with. They kind of just choose their favorite colors and just run with it, and it doesn't always work out well. So, probably going to take me a minute to get into stride here. Anyway, with character design, I guess the key thing to focus on with character design, by the way, I have delay turned down as much as I can. It's kind of in beta on Twitch, but it will still be about around 10 to 15 seconds, so just bear with me. So in terms of character design, fuck, hang on a second, I gotta turn off the AC. Okay. The AC is literally so fucking loud that it overrides my voice volume. So anyway, for overall character design and stuff, first thing to think about is the general profile that a character has. And you've kind of seen cases like this. I really wish that AC would fucking shut off already. You've sometimes seen stuff like this with like female character designs and stuff. How they'll say like, oh, they're hourglass shaped, or oh, they're pear shaped, or oh, they're box shaped, or oh, they're apple shaped, and stuff like that. And what that basically just means is kind of like the general gist of the shape that the character takes. Character that's like boxy would kind of look more like that. Character that's more hourglass would of course have boobs and butt, etc. Pear-shaped one would have a big ass fanny. Like so. And these general shapes are kind of like, they're not really hyper descriptive and stuff. Like, you can be flexible with them. Some good practice that you can do when it comes to character design is just to kind of choose a random shape and try to design a character around it. Like, for instance, take a triangle and now try to make Reaper look like a triangle. It's him, it's Reaper from Overwatch. And now he looks like a scary, edgy triangle. And see, that's kind of just the general gist and idea behind character design. Shapes. Of course, if you want to do something more humanoid, you can, but you can even vary character design shapes there as well. The reason why I'd suggest using like generic shapes and stuff for stuff like this is because it kind of forces you to focus on emphasis, and it forces you to focus on exaggeration and stuff like that. So that's something useful to work with and something useful to practice. So when it comes to more humanoid character designs, the key thing is to basically have variety. You kind of get a lot of cases where you'll have character designs where it's like, oh, I have a cute anime girl, and I have a bunch of cute anime girl characters, and the only thing different between them is their hairstyle and color, their eye color, and their bust size. And that's literally the only difference, and that constitutes character design. Well, that's kind of a lazy way to do character design. Like, you can vary height, you can vary stature, you can vary weight distribution and stuff. You can figure out where you want emphasis to basically go on a character. Like, I don't know, I'm just kind of doodling at the moment, but you can kind of see where I'm going with this, where it's like, this one has the one on the left here has a much longer torso, this one here is a bit shorter, and it has a lot more junk in the trunk, etc. So this, let's see where to go with this. Actually, does anybody have any questions specifically that they would want to ask about this kind of topic and stuff, like with character profile and things like that? No one? Okay. So, let's see. I guess we'll kind of go over a few character designs that I've done before. I'll start with actually one of my more favorite character designs. Axel, for instance, who he appeared briefly in the Override animation. He's also been a character in PvO2. The way I kind of think about him is that he's just very slender in general. And you notice that I kind of give him an eye shape. Not like an eyeball, but more like the letter I. This is him from the side. He's very, 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 very thin. And he's kind of got this like little slight whoosh to his shape. Kind of makes it look like his legs go backwards. His face in particular is very, very rectangular. In fact, a lot about him is very angular and stuff, so he kind of looks a little edgy. Oops. Even his eyes in particular, like Pivot's eyes, for instance, I draw Pivot's eyes like so. Her eyes are kind of round. Axel's eyes, meanwhile, and it's not just a male thing, normally male eyes are going to be a little bit more angular as well. For most character designs, it's kind of just a recurring trope, especially in anime. But even his pupils and his irises are square. I'll cover a little bit on Mary Sue aspect, but I'm more focusing on the artistic aspects, Banana Cami. I'll cover a little bit about like Mary Sue's and stuff, because there is an element I'm going to cover about design and how it winds up reflecting a character's intentions, and basically how to avoid stuff like that. Because there are a few tropes that you do wind up noticing and things like that. Anyway, going back to Axel. For his arms, I kind of just do 2 inverted triangles and stuff, like so. I just kind of, so that way his arms taper to the elbow, both directions. And then he's also got triangular shoulder pads, and a lot about him is just rectangular or triangular. And he's very tall, and sometimes I draw his head too big. I draw a lot of characters' heads too big. One other tip about head and body ratios. A smaller head will make a character look taller or bigger. Bigger heads will make them look shorter. But anyway, you can see that this is kind of a, like, the balance and distribution. One thing with Axel that actually isn't that good is his distribution is fairly regimen. It's fairly even throughout. Like, his torso takes up that much, his upper leg and his arm take up that much, and then his leg takes up that much. He's very consistent in terms of his weight distribution, which isn't really a good trait. It's not like the end of the world, but it'd be more interesting if I had varied his shape a little bit more. I'll be right back. So yeah, sorry about that. His shape would be more interesting if I had varied the weight distribution a little bit further. But that's not the end of the world for him. Meanwhile, I have a character like Pivot, who she's a little bit more round. She's a lot shorter. Kind of start with a diamond shape, and then I kind of do like this weird round shape. She's got a butt. And she's a little bit more evenly proportioned. Like Axel, he has really long arms. That's one intentional design with him. I wanted his hands to go down to his knees. Pivot, meanwhile, she's kind of more humanoid with her proportions, and her arms only go to around here. And she's got a few angles, but she's a lot rounder overall. And it's got a lot more soft areas. You can see the overall shape differences and some of the character design differences and stuff there. Let's see. With Pivot, weight distribution kind of gets a little bit more interesting because she's got this huge ass ponytail going on. She's also got like this weird waistcoat thing, which really kind of breaks up her design a lot. So you have this big chunk of skirt, and you have these little bits here. Little boobs. And then she's got a lot of exposed leg as well. And then it's also kind of, the arms are kind of follow that same suit because she's got like a little bit of distribution here. And it's a little bit more varied in terms of distribution, though it would be significantly less varied if she didn't have this huge ass ponytail. So those are some elements there. the key thing when it comes to design, because I was talking about like round shapes and angular shapes and stuff, generally rounder shapes are going to be seen as more like welcoming, inviting, friendly. They're going to be more like, what's the word I'm looking for? Round shapes are going to basically be cuter overall, or more friendly. More like sharp corners and stuff are going to be more dangerous, and they're going to be more edgy, scary characters. Like if you look at, let's actually take a look at some characters. Let's go back to Reaper from Overwatch. I'm going to point out a few things with his design, because I think this is a good thing to look at. He is everybody's favorite edgelord. You notice with Reaper, for instance, you've got sharp corners, spikies. He's got a sharp hood. He's got a sharp face. He's got sharp shoulder pads. Notice the recurring thing here. He's got all these sharp angles that are kind of like part of his design. And if you look at his overall profile, it's also a triangle. Imagine that. Meanwhile, let's look at like Jack Morrison. Let's stay in the Overwatch realm and let's look at Jack Morrison, or Soldier 76. You've got a more square shape here. It's not as angled. You got round shapes going on here. His gun itself is a lot boxier. And his overall profile is fairly straight. Like, even if you look at his design in game, he doesn't have like a flow. Like, even when he has his cape, it's not really triangular, but like, God damn it, 78, not 76. Even if you look at his overall design, he's just very rectangular, very square. He's not like perfectly boxy, but it's just a very stable shape and stuff. And you notice that he's got like, the only real angular part to him is really his face mask, and that's only because of his history and stuff. But even then, his head is still largely square, despite the fact that he's got a more triangle chin. And that kind of plays into his personality. You have somebody over here on the left who is very square and rectangular and very stable, and then you have somebody who's very triangular and who's very edgy and dangerous and hardcore and a try-hard badass. And that kind of shows how design intent kind of winds up working. That's why so many moe anime characters and stuff, or like, hell, even the dreaded Cal art style that people like to riff on, it's got this weird little cheek thing, and it's got a very round smile, like Sans Undertale. It's him. It's your favorite. It's Sans Undertale. But yeah, basically, you can kind of basically start to notice the general theme here. This seems like a lot to basically say angles equal edgy, round equals friendly, etc. But it does wind up kind of reflecting. And going back to Pivot and Axel in particular, he's got angle, he's got all these angles because he's supposed to be kind of like a dangerous kind of character, even if it's not really, he's not really too dangerous, but like, he's supposed to feel kind of like an uncertain element. Whereas Pivot's kind of got a little bit more contrast to her design and stuff, because I want her to be badass, but she's also cute. And I got like a little bit of a triangle design here, but very round on the legs, etc. Especially this part here is very, very round on her hair. So that kind of summarizes up shape intentions and stuff, and I've also covered balance and stuff. If you guys also have any questions, feel free to ask them and I'll cover them in a minute. If you want to ask them over the Twitch chat, or if you want to ask them over the Classroom chat on the Patreon Discord server, I'll get to them. And again, these are character design stuff. If you want to ask like specific elements or how you would go about designing a character, etc. So let's see, what else is there to cover? I'm actually making some pretty good time here. So another element to cover is also elements of color. Because a lot of people, they don't really know how to color their OCs and stuff, and they don't know what colors they want to use. This will actually kind of lay into the idea of a Mary Sue, because a lot of Mary Sues, they just kind of take their favorite colors, go full saturation, and mix them together with no element of harmony to them. Key thing for color is you want to choose kind of a few key colors to build around. And you want to figure out what you can keep stable and what you would wind up varying. Like, I guess we'll just kind of give a bit of history here, because I'll use Pivot again because she's my LC. I put a lot of thought into her color design, or her color scheme, because something kind of interesting, I actually don't really care much for the colors orange or yellow, but they work good on her. So some elements that I kind of thought of. I'd actually pulled a bit of inspiration from Cave Story, particularly, because if you know the character Curly Brace, she's got kind of a white exterior, and then she's got the reddish-orange pants and shirt, and she's got the blonde hair. So I kind of used those as a bit of a starting point. I kind of gave Pivot kind of like, let me tint this a little, so that way it contrasts. I gave Pivot like whitish-grayish skin. And then I kind of gave her like blondish hair. And the issue here, this would be too saturated probably. So one little tip you can do, or there's multiple ways you can do it, just kind of tweak around with it. You don't have to have everything be full saturation. I kind of made it, like here I'm just kind of making the hair a little bit less saturated and a little bit lighter, and that looks a little bit more reasonable. And I kind of contrasted it with a little bit of a cream colored accent. If you're doing colors for the first time on a character, you might want to keep things on a separate layer. Some of the original designs for Pivot actually used red for her dress and stuff like that, as well as blue. And I didn't really like that because it felt too much like a roll from Mega Man. And it felt too much like a copy of Curly Brace as well. So I kind of just experimented a bit, asked from friends and stuff. Eventually, I kind of decided, like, you know, let's see. That doesn't look too bad, the orangish yellowish. Well, from here, these were basically kind of the core colors that I kind of decided upon. And then I decided to do one thing that would kind of complement orange. The opposite of orange is blue, but if you want to do something kind of complementary, I'm going to do a triad where the triad would basically be orange, purple, and pink. So I kind of chose a purple color, but I decided to contrast it a little bit, make it darker. And then I gave her pink tie, pink eyes. Granted, the pink against the orange really doesn't look good. So I kind of wanted to break it up, which is why she has that little white bit showing through her shirt. And that's kind of basically the general gist of how I came up with the color design. And there's a few small accent colors and stuff, like the little tans or little gizmos and stuff like that. But yeah. So that's kind of how I handled color, I guess. Key thing is to try to think of things in terms of combinations. Like, let me actually type this out so that way you guys don't have to deal with the delay. Give me colors and I'll show how to harmonize them for a character design. I kind of wish... Let me doodle up something really quick for a character shape. Make an orc, I guess. Going back to some other character design elements, I just kind of doodled this orc out of thin air here. And you'll notice he doesn't really look that intimidating, and that's because I gave him a very square profile with very round shapes. So he kind of looks approachable, generally, and a little bit goofy. Whereas if I had given him more of a triangular profile and stuff, he'd look more intimidating. So the colors that I've been given here have been blue and green. If you guys want to suggest a few other colors as well, feel free, and I'll add them to this design here. But if I were just going at it, probably think like, oh, green, blue. That looks hideous. This combination of colors looks absolutely atrocious. Luckily, there's more colors of green other than super saturated. We can go a super desaturated green and kind of give them a nice palish green shade. Like so. And then for blue, let's contrast that with some really dark navy blue. Give them some nice dark armor. And see, that's how some colors kind of can work. That's a good starting point. Make this a little bit more interesting though. So we've got blue, we've got green. Let's give him some kind of a rustic gold trim. Because that would kind of harmonize with everything. He looks very royal now. Looks like he's a member of the Royal Guard. And I completely misplaced his crotch. But whatever. And then let's also do this. Let's give him a lighter grayish blue for kind of like some intermediate parts, such as like on his sleeves and on his leggings. And see, that's kind of how you can balance color. I hope that this doesn't seem too vague, what I'm doing. But like, the key thing that I'm getting at here is that you don't want to try and just do full saturation, full hardcore bright colors. If you have a favorite color that you want to use, work around that and stuff. And keep in mind that your favorite color can come in various different shades and styles and stuff like that. So, let's see, what else is there to cover? So one thing I'm going to pull up, one of my patrons, Temperator, has asked me to help him tweak one of his character designs. So I am going to pull up his character. Where did I put it? Enterprise, personal Patreon. Alright, so this was based on some original designs of his character. So, I'm going to quick go over, just kind of give a little bit of critique. I had actually drawn this image for him based off of a ref image. So, first things first, let's just go through a little bit of analysis here. I'm going to use blue for my highlighting pen. Overall, for the profile, it's very square and kind of slender. Like, that should be obvious. And the head is, however, is very round. So that kind of gives the feeling of, like, stability for, like, again, stability for the character design, because you're combining round elements and square elements. So he's supposed to feel like... So, based on those shapes, he should feel kind of like a good guy. But the character himself is fairly intimidating and stuff, and fairly... He's meant to kind of feel a little bit eerie or unnerving. And you can see kind of like overall, he's just very... There's a lot of squares going on. However, he's not really kind of try to be... Or he's not really, as far as I understand it, not really so much of a hero so much. So, some other things to talk about is also just the weight distribution. If you look at the legs, he's basically got the suit, he's got the pants, and then he's got the head. The weight distribution is very non-varied. Like, the most complex part is in the head, obviously. But the rest of the body is kind of like, oh, there's the suit and there's the pant legs, and there's not really any new elements to that. So I guess his outfit would be another thing that you could potentially modify or tweak. So let's take him, put him in a new document in the corner. So some elements that you could change or modify and stuff. One thing that Temperator had specifically expressed is he wanted the face to kind of feel like a clockwork mask in a sense, kind of like more of a gothic clockwork, if that makes sense. So looking at the face, one change that I would maybe make would be to not only simplify the face a little bit, but this is actually one thing that I kind of also want to cover. Complex designs don't necessarily equate to more complex appearances. Likewise, sometimes you can make simplistic appearances and patterning look more complex and more convoluted than they actually are. So this case, this is complicated to draw, but overall the design of it doesn't really feel too complicated. Like, when you're looking at it, it feels relatively simple, despite the fact that it's a little bit harder to draw than it actually looks. So you can vary this a bit. Bear with me a little bit because this is kind of hard to explain. So first things first, I would suggest maybe a little bit of a face change, so that way his mask, so that way this head or this mask isn't completely round. Make it a little bit more angular, so it's a little bit more dynamic. Maybe give it a little bit of a skull shape. So I mean, if you're gonna consider a skull, for instance, you got kind of, that's just the general gist of the shape. You can kind of use that as a reference point. One key thing about skulls is that they kind of have that part where the upper part of the jaw kind of just dips down and kind of gets really narrow. So you could play on that. Have the round part kind of cut off and become a little bit intimidating. This, by just cutting out a few chunks at the side there, this immediately becomes a less round and less friendly shape. It becomes a little bit more dangerous. Likewise, the eyes go like this on a skull, but in TikTok's case, he's got that kind of Hal eye going on. I'll add that in a minute. First things first, I'm just going to kind of experiment a little bit. Let's get some Gothic clockwork. So one thing about this character is that the face design is obviously asymmetrical. And it's kind of got a bit of a pattern going on. So kind of just follow those patterns, kind of just develop a few patterns kind of going around and stuff and add a few breaks to them to kind of simplify things out. But this isn't a too drastic of a change. But it's significant enough that feels like, how to describe it? I don't really know what I'm saying right now. I'm kind of losing my words. But I guess what I'm trying to get at here, this doesn't really look too complicated to draw, but you can kind of already see that just the way the distribution is, because the head shape is a little bit different. It's already starting to feel a little bit different compared to, or it's already starting to feel a little bit more complex than the original, and maybe a little bit more characteristic. Some other things you could do is you could add parts jutting out here, kind of throw off the balance or whatever. And when you're conceptualizing a character, by the way, I'm not going to do multiple designs for this one. I will do that later when I'm actually fully helping redesign the character or modify the character. Do multiple passes of stuff. So like, don't just, like, I'm kind of just doing this just for teaching purposes, but you'd want to do multiple things like this and kind of decide from there what you want to do, or if you're working with somebody else, what they want, stuff like that. So largely what I'm trying to get at is with this original design, where the simplicity came from was just the overall shape. The overall shape kind of contrasted with the complexities and the intricacies of the internals. Meanwhile, simplifying the internals a bit but making the overall head shape a little bit more complex, in addition to being a little bit easier to draw and remember how to draw, also looks a little bit more complex as well. In terms of the outfit design, it can help to look at references and stuff, but overall, if you're going with like a suit, suits are generally very rectangular. Things like that. Key thing is basically trying to figure out where you want it to vary. The thing with the original design is that it was gray, 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 with a little bit of red. You can have the chest part of the design go down a little bit further if you wanted. Kind of more like a tuxedo. No, it's not really a tuxedo. And that would kind of provide a little bit more emphasis. And have the suit open up a little bit and have it only be buttoned at one button. So that way there's the undershirt. That way there's a belt. Actually, one character design. People give Battleborn a lot of shit. But it actually has some pretty interesting character designs, and I actually gotta admit I do like them. If you want to see a character design of another robot type character that uses a suit, just look at Battleborn. This is kind of an interesting design, because you can kind of see the weight distribution on him. He's not perfectly rectangular. You can kind of see that he kind of has a tapering to his entire body as you go up. And as you go away from the torso, things kind of get wider. His stance gets wider and stuff like that. He's got the joints going on. He's got a suit that flares out and things like that. So if you're coming up with character designs, don't be afraid to kind of pull inspiration from things, I guess. Anyway, talking about overall profile. Probably should start there. Generally, male characters are going to be a little bit more rectangular than female characters, but either way. This is just kind of me free drawing at the moment, just trying to kind of conceptualize something. So, in this overall design, it's a little bit more angular and has a little bit more tapering going on compared to the original one. This is just one kind of idea. And obviously, like, I'm not going to say this is what Temperator will obviously do for his character. These are just going to be some examples of suggestions that I'm going to give him. But as you can see, this design here, or this suit, kind of has a little bit more emphasis. The legs are made a little bit longer. There is the break going on here where the suit kind of where the top half of the jacket kind of buttons in. You've got more emphasis on the chest part, and you could maybe make this area a little bit lighter. The arms are a little bit more dramatically tapered. And there's also like the flap of the back of the jacket, which kind of flaps out here, which kind of adds a little bit more, kind of makes it flush out a little bit. And overall, it still feels very kind of posh and things like that. It's even got the timepiece going on still. But it feels a lot more, there's more angles going on to this, and there's more triangles specifically. It's not all perfectly rectangular. So this might be an example of a more edgy or more intimidating character design, a more unsettling one. But at the same time, it wouldn't be too unsettling because, I mean, it's a guy in a suit. It's not to like. So yeah, that's kind of just a few things where I'd maybe start with character design stuff. So, I'm gonna ask, who wants to... So, does anybody want to actually ask any questions or actually suggest anything for me to cover? Or maybe something for me to cover in more detail, or maybe give me an example of something to kind of design a character of using like a character design prompt. Because sometimes teaching through example is a little bit easier than just talking about the concepts themselves. Anyone? I'm gonna save this. How to retain character shape when doing more action-y poses. That's actually a pretty good one. So the key thing to note is to break your characters down. Actually, I'm surprised I didn't mention this. When you're designing your characters, I did mention like that shapes are important. The key thing is to always think of your character in those key shapes. I'm going to go back and I'm going to use pivot again because I'm a whore. Pivot's design overall is kind of like this inverse diamond, and then kind of like a bell shape, and then kind of just like very tapered down for the legs. This is kind of for overall shape. You can kind of see the general shapes going on here. I use a circle for the base for the head, etc. So the thing is, with pivot, you got to think about lines of action. Lines of actions are probably the easiest way to kind of think about things. So if I were to draw a line going through here, from the top to the bottom, and then I were to draw kind of like a more action-y pose, say I'm going to have her rushing to the side, like doing a shoulder attack. If I were to kind of follow the action line, where this kind of is where the neck sits, and this is kind of where the pelvis sits, you don't have to follow it one-to-one, but I kind of just draw these shapes on the action line. And I kind of just draw them how I need them to go. Can break anatomy a little bit. A dynamic pose, like ideally you're not going to have to break anatomy too much, but don't sacrifice a good pose just for the sake of perfect anatomy. You want to have some kind of balance going on. In animations especially, you have to wind up breaking anatomy quite a lot, especially for in-betweens. And one other nice thing about digital art is if you put something in the wrong spot, you can just select it and you can just move it. And that's one reason why I much prefer digital art to traditional art. Because I'm lazy. So that's kind of the gist of the idea. Is basically kind of breaking down the action line into, or basically breaking down the character components and putting them on the action line. Or just drawing them in an arrangement that makes sense to an action line. Like, usually the action line kind of comes after the drawing itself, but you can do whatever works. Like, nobody's gonna knock you for drawing on top of an action line at all. Okay, another question. How to make a generic character stand out using very minor details. So, let's see. Obviously, if you're an anime, the key thing to make a generic character stand out is to make sure that nobody else has any character details going on, and they are completely blank, expressionless. And your character is the only one with multicolored hair and big ass titties. No, but the thing with minor details is they're not really going to be what causes a character to stand out. What makes a character stand out is more going to be the larger ideas behind a character, like overall profile shape. Like Pivot stands out because she's got the overall short, like, what was I saying? Pivot stands out because she's overall kind of short and she's got the bottom heavy frame and stuff like that. She wouldn't stand out if she was among a lot of other characters that also had that same frame. So the key thing to making characters stand out is to have character diversity and stuff. Have characters that are tall, have characters that are short, have characters that are muscular, have characters that are fat. I'm just kind of drawing a few basic profile shapes, but these are all characters that have appeared in my webcomic. Or the general profile shapes that I use for a bunch of characters in my webcomic and stuff. I mean, contrast in design overall is going to be what influences a character standing out moreover. For minor details and stuff, like, details are still important. And yes, Specbell, that is Gladys on the left. And then obviously this one here is Axel, and then the one on the far right is Socket, who I haven't reintroduced yet since the reboot. But as far as small details go, those are more kind of just like the dressings and stuff. Like, think about the small details less as like the icing on the cake, and think of them more about the sprinkles on the cupcake. Think of them as the small little things that kind of like endear you if you notice them, but they're not going to be the first thing that you notice. So things like give a character a mole, or maybe give a character like a little curlicue kind of on the top of their head, like Gladys. Got this little antenna thing going on that is now made of fin because she's a shark. So little things like that. And it's all kind of dependent on what you want to do or what you think is suitable. Some people will say like, oh, the little antenna thing, that's like a cute character trait, but sometimes you'll also have other characters that aren't cute that have that kind of stuff, like Adele from Disgaea 2, for instance. He has a big ass antenna thing going on, and he's not really seen as a cute character. I'll pull him up really quick, just as an example. I actually really like Disgaea's character designs. Like, as you can see, Adele, he has that little antenna thing going on. Actually, let's actually just look at him really quick, because this is another element of character design. Adele's overall profile, for instance, is again very square, but he's also got notable angles going on, especially like with his hair. And he's got this huge ass stupid collar. I fucking love his design so much. It's so stupid. He's got this huge ass tie going on. He's got all. I just fucking love Disgaea, okay? I'm gonna say this. I love this guy. I love the character designs of this guy. I love the male characters. I love the female characters. I love all of them. But he's kind of got angles to his face without being too triangular. He's got a bit triangularity to his design because he's a fighter character. He uses his fists. He loves fighting, stuff like that. But he also very much tries to be a good guy, so he's very rectangular as well. Yeah, he's a very warm-looking character. So he's kind of like... He's basically kind of got all the traits of a stereotypical protagonist, and he even acts the part in the game itself. And those are all reflected in his character design. And it actually winds up working really well. So, actually, I'm going to take a few suggestions. If you guys want to toss any character designs at me that you think are interesting character designs, mention them. I'll Google them really quick, pull them up, and I will quick dissect them. And we can kind of go over this as more examples and things like that. I gotta wait a few seconds because the delay in the stream. Anybody have any suggestions or ideas? Mario. Okay, here we go. Pull up Mario. This is a pretty simple example. Unfortunately, I don't know who James Lee Animation is, and I won't be able to really pull them up easily on Google. Alright, we'll start with Mario, and then I'll check out Tanya. So, Mario. So the first things you guys should all notice is round. He's very round. He's got a round body, got a round face, round nose, round eyes, round chin, round hands, round shoes. Even his legs are slightly round. Like, even though the legs are obviously like rectangular because of the shadowing and stuff, you can obviously tell that they are very, very cylindrical. Overall, he's just very round. And his overall profile is likewise pretty round. So what does that tell you about Mario? He's shaped like a friend. Mario is shaped like a friend. You know, it's kind of funny because I've seen a lot of posts going around on Tumblr and stuff of characters with the big ass titties, and it's like, Hikage is shaped like a friend. And it's like, yeah, technically she is, because boobs are friendly. That's why people like boobs, is because boobs are friends. So yeah, that's just kind of a simple breakdown of Mario and stuff. Like, that's not too of a complicated of one. You want to look at his distribution on weights and stuff. You can see you got blue for the overalls going up all over here. So that occupies a big chunk. And then you have red and blue, which are fairly complementary, contrasting one another, so those kind of bring the best out in each other. Then you've also got yellow. You're getting all three primary colors there. Well, primary pigments. And then you've also got the red, of course, which is distributed just along here, 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 and of course on his iconic cap. I mean, if you look at the weight distribution overall, in terms of color, you've got a tiny bit of yellow, a lot of blue, and a decent amount of red. And red winds up sticking out with you just because it's a little bit more Probably just because it's more to the top, to be totally honest. Like the shirt is red and then the cap is red, and that's what winds up sticking out. So let's see. That's Mario. Now let's look at Tanya. Tanya from the game Tanya the Evil. Oh, I've heard of this. It's that one anime about that guy who gets reincarnated as Lolly in fascist Germany. I don't know about going over this one, to be totally honest. Just because it's like... I don't know. This would be even more of a basics character analysis than even Mario at this point. Like, the thing that really kind of, with this character overall... Come on. I need to get a new mouse really bad. The thing with this character overall that kind of demonstrates her personality is more just the expressions that she winds up making, and if you Google her name, you will wind up seeing this much more significantly. But yeah. Like overall, it's just kind of typical uniform stuff. Alright, Gabriel. I'll look at one more. Oh yeah, Gabriel Dropout is that one thing about, or that one anime about the deities or the demigods or demi-humans who are now all high school girls. And I'll be totally honest, I don't know anything about this character. I don't even know what she represents. I mean, supposedly, another screenshot shows her with horns, so I'd imagine that she's a demon, and she's friends with Satan. But, like, let's just look at some of the character designs, or some of the basic breakdown. So, I'll be honest, shape-wise, nothing really stands out all that much to me for her. It's kind of fallen into the same trope that a lot of anime has. Not really much to say about it. If you look at the outfit distribution, you've got good contrast and good balance and stuff, and good distribution overall. You've got a medium chunk for the head, a large chunk for the jacket, a short chunk for the skirt, chunk for the legs, and an even chunk for the shins. That's pretty good distribution. It's just like, overall, it's really hard to tell what this character is about, I'd say, without knowing what this, without seeing the series in of itself. Samurai Jack actually would be a really good suggestion to kind of look at. Let's take a look at ML from Near, and this will be the last one. Is Emil the guy that Yoko Taro uses as the mask, or is that the kid? Well, I'm going to go with this version, because this version actually is interesting and is a lot easier to kind of break down. So, breakdown again. Triangular. That should be pretty clear. So, very dangerous. He's a very danger. And even though he's got the round going on up here, you've got this weird shape going through the middle, and it's kind of just unsettling. This is almost too round. So it doesn't come across as friendly, it comes across as just creepy, which is totally the intention going on here. For color distribution, same thing. There's not really a lot of variety to this character, but there is very big weights going on. This huge ass block that's all weighted here. The scarf kind of gets lost into the body itself, but whatever, not that big of an issue. One thing that's actually probably the most unsettling about the character design here is just the shape, the head shape. Normally heads will follow more of a round shape, but in this case it is so perfectly round that it's almost eerie. It's almost kind of like Binding of Isaac kind of uses a similar trope, but instead of giving it the sad mouth like crying, and just like very detailed teeth. And that's what kind of makes it creepy, is especially the fact that you can also see the gums. I guess you had asked earlier about details bringing out elements of the character design. I guess this actually would be a good example of that, because it's largely like the details on the gums that kind of help elevate the head from being just kind of like an innocent, and like especially the outline around the eyes that kind of make them look more sunken in. It makes this go from being like a simple kind of mundane design to like really eerie looking. The gums particularly are what kind of bring this out to me. Other people might disagree or might have different ideas, but that's the most unsettling part about it for me. And that's why it's effective as a creepy character design. Not to mention the fucking skeleton feet at the bottom, but that's an obvious one. So yeah, otherwise, it's been about an hour. Thank you guys for watching my stream. This has been a pretty good lesson, I'd say. It was kind of nice to stick to a single theme for once. So I will be cutting the stream in a moment here. This will be uploaded to YouTube, and it will also be saved to my Twitch. So if you want to rewatch this lesson at some other time, you can. Thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next month.